Welcome to the Marketing Innovators Podcast. Today, we have Cassandra Jowett, who is the Senior Director of Marketing and she of PathFactory. And she leads PathFactory's demand generation, content marketing, customer marketing, brand event, PR, and social media strategies, as well as works collaboratively with their product team to boost awareness, generate demand, increase revenue, and support customer retention and growth. Looks like you've got your hands full, Cassandra. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I've kind of been going through your background a little bit over here, and it's interesting that you have a very interesting journey starting from journalism. How did you end up being the Senior Director of Marketing at PathFactory?
Sure. It's a bit of a long story, I guess, but I'll just start at the beginning. I always wanted to be a journalist all through high school, and I founded my high school student newspaper and all those sorts of things. So I decided I would go to journalism school and I would become a foreign correspondent and cover all the big issues of the world and travel and learn about all different cultures around the world and things like that. And so I did go to journalism school. I went to Ryerson University in Toronto, which may not be called Ryerson University for much longer. There's a big controversy about the name right now and its connection, unfortunately, to residential schools. But maybe I'll be a graduate of a different university soon, but we'll see what happens with that. But for now, we'll say Ryerson. And they have a great journalism program there. And I had an amazing time learning how to become a journalist. And it was a very tactical, hands-on program where you also got to do internships. So I did an internship at the National Post, which is, one of the largest newspapers here in Canada. It wasn't necessarily a great fit for me from a political perspective necessarily. It's a very conservative newspaper, but it was awesome to see the inner workings of a newsroom and how decisions about stories get made and all that sort of stuff. And I even got a bunch of front page stories, which was really exciting for me. But at that time, it was also the start of the recession in 2008, 2009, and I graduated into that climate and just couldn't find a journalism job that paid to save my life. And I was seeing really, really talented journalists around me who, had done stints at maybe the New York Post or the New York Times and the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star. They were still doing unpaid internships even after having all of that experience. And I didn't even have that much experience. So I had started working with a small startup in Toronto when I was still a student, and I was sort of just doing some sales and marketing and social media work for them because, of course, at that time, social media was just starting to come on the scene. Everyone was on Facebook and Twitter had just launched. So just starting to see how can we leverage this to grow this really small business. I was employee number one as a summer student. So I was literally like in a cubicle back to back with the founder, just cold calling and managing clients and doing all the things, writing blog posts that need to get done. And so when I graduated and couldn't really find anything in journalism, she was like, well, why don't you come work for me? And, you can maybe take on more of a marketing and community management role as we grow the business. There aren't a lot of it was a student recruitment website. And she's like, there aren't a lot of employers hiring today in 2009, but I think that, in a couple of years, this will blow over and there will be this great need for millennials in the workforce because all the baby boomers are going to be retiring and they have to be replaced. So I joined that team and just started doing things. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was working with someone as a founder who was only a few years older than me. She had a graduate degree at least. So she had a bit more she had gone to business school. She had a bit more business knowledge than me, but I just knew how to create content. I knew how to interview people. I knew how to write quickly on deadline. And so we started what we called at the time, it was an online magazine, which was basically just a blog, and, started creating content for students and recent grads to help them navigate that sort of school to work transition. We started creating content for employers to help them understand how to attract millennials to their really boring industries like insurance and oil and gas and engineering and things like that. So, there was sort of just this idea that we would bridge that gap and create a lot of content to help both sides of that equation understand each other better. And I didn't know anything about SEO or domain authority, or I didn't even know what content marketing was. I called myself an editor at the time, but slowly over time, I realized that this was a real discipline called content marketing. And that's how we were growing the business. We were, collecting names on the back of of all of the content we were creating. We were building email lists, we were running events. There was just a lot of stuff that, we were able to create on the back of all of that content. And it turned into a real business. So I was there for about 5 years and basically became, the second most senior person at the company very early in my career. And, realized that there was a whole other world out there of real marketing that I didn't know about yet, but I wanted to learn. And so I joined a VC-funded software company that had just raised, their Series B, and they had brought in a more experienced head of marketing. So I joined that company to learn from him and from the company overall, and that just sort of opened my eyes more to things like, demand gen, as everyone talks about it today, funnels, and all that sort of stuff. And that's sort of where my journey towards PathFactory began. Just taking a content role at a software company that was maybe a bit more of a traditional SaaS business, and had the marketing automation and all of the business philosophy behind, turning leads into revenue through a sales team. Like, we didn't have that at the first company that I worked at. So I kind of got my SaaS marketing education at that company, which was Influitive, another Toronto-based software company here. And I worked there for 4 years and learned all about that, became kind of nerdy about demand gen in particular. I really wanted to understand how content could fuel demand gen. And I was very nosy about how my demand gen peer was using my content that I created or that my team created. Wanted to know all about the decisions that they were making to ensure that it performed the best that it possibly could. And so that kind of led me down a path of understanding what tools could be used by both content and demand gen. And, through a mutual connection, I met the marketing team at a company called Lookbook HQ, which is what PathFactory was called before we rebranded in 2018. And just kind of fell in love with the idea that, as marketers, we should be thinking more about the journey, creating journeys with content to help people move through the buying cycle instead of just sort of emailing people one-off content assets and hoping that it performs well and we can generate leads from it. So I love that philosophy, and it just seemed like a really good fit for me and for the team. And so I've been here at PathFactory now for over 4 years, and it's been a great ride so far.
That is amazing. I mean, what a ride has it been? I mean, it's an interesting journey and how you end up in places, right from journalism into the current position. And it seems to me that content has always been your baby right from the get-go. So when you joined PathFactory, and obviously with your current role, can you maybe describe a little bit as to what exactly are you responsible for as far as helping PathFactory grow?
Sure. I joined as the director of content marketing back in 2017. And, I think the big challenge that we had was that the company had a lot of really great top of funnel thought leadership content about changes in B2B marketing overall, but it wasn't really a consistent story to help people understand, some solutions to those changes that are happening in the market, as well as, how our products could help them solve those things. And so working with demand gen and sales and the product team, we looked a lot at, where is our product roadmap going and what do we have to educate people about in terms of getting them on board with, wanting to buy PathFactory, because it's not necessarily it's not like, oh, you have one marketing automation platform and you're just replacing it with another because they have something that you like better. It's a totally new investment, a totally new strategy. And so you have to do a lot of convincing. And so we just sort of looked at what assets can we create to educate people, not just about, the awareness of the problems that, they face as B2B marketers, but how we can help them and what are some best practices that we can give them so that they trust us and, buy into this more sort of evangelical sale along the way faster. And so, creating more of that middle and bottom of funnel content that can facilitate that can support the sales team as they're navigating that process. Because the thing about marketing and selling to marketers is that they don't always trust salespeople. They want to do their own research. They want to reach into their network and see what other marketers are saying. They want to know that, you're not just smoke and mirrors. They want to know that there's really good people and technology and thinking behind the solution that you're offering them. And so you have to convince them all of that through content. And of course, salespeople always play a role. And I think we have and have had some really amazing salespeople here who can bridge that gap. But you need a certain level of content to get people to that point of wanting to speak to a salesperson or being willing to speak to a salesperson. It would be great if we, just never had to speak to salespeople as marketers. But if we're buying really expensive technology for our companies, you always have to, at some point, get lots of other people involved. So that was definitely my focus coming in the door. And I think that that's just a great thing overall. When I look at most companies' strategies, they do a really amazing job, raising awareness, maybe bringing leads into the top of the funnel, but nurturing them from there is a much greater challenge. And it's tough to understand, what content should you create to fill those gaps? Is it working? How is it working? How do you measure that? A big challenge I had at my previous company before I came here was that demand gen kept saying that content assets weren't working because they weren't generating a lot of leads at the top of the funnel, but really they were designed to be used more in the middle or bottom. And so they're not designed to generate leads. And so if you measure them that way, they look like failures. They're designed to, accelerate the buying process. They're designed to get people to show up to meetings with sales, all of those different things. And so, you kind of have to look at how are you measuring the success of this and how is it being used? If you use it in the wrong way, then of course it's going to look like a failure. So just thinking about some of those challenges, I think can be really impactful for a content marketer.
Absolutely. I think that's a very, very important point that you've highlighted, because obviously when we're trying to understand, what kind of marketing is in alignment with the customer journey, it's extremely important what kind of leads you're getting and at what stage of the funnel, because when it comes to conversions, you really have to make sure you're targeting the right people at the right time. So we'll get into the funnel part here in a little bit more detail, but I'm really interested to know for the listeners who are not very familiar with PathFactory, if you can maybe give a quick 11-second pitch about what PathFactory is about.
Sure. So PathFactory is the intelligent content platform for B2B marketers and sales teams. And the way I can describe it the simplest is that, it helps you accelerate those buyer and customer journeys by enabling sort of content engagement across any channel and to give you a lot of really great insights about how that content is performing, no matter where you display it, whether it's on your website or on the other side of an email or an ad. There's a lot of great data that we give marketers to help them understand that performance, power things like lead scoring and lead nurturing, give insights to sales about who's really engaged, all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't even really begin to cover all of the interesting things that it does, but if I only had 11 seconds, that's how I would describe it.
All right. So is it or is it not a marketing automation platform?
It's not a marketing automation platform. It kind of layers on top of any marketing automation platform. Most of our customers use it in tandem with Marketo or Eloqua or Pardot, sometimes HubSpot. And, basically what you're doing is instead of just giving people, say, a PDF or a one-off video or a random blog post without really being able to measure how it's working, you can give them a series of content assets all together, and you can either manually curate that list of assets, or you can let AI predict what the person should look at for you. And so it kind of encourages people to keep consuming content again and again and again in the same session. So encouraging them to binge like Netflix on content so that they get educated faster. And then that data can actually be brought into the marketing automation platform to enable things like, say you have a nurture program running in Marketo and you're going to send people one touch every week or something, typical nurture program. And so if they've already looked at assets 2, 3, and 4 in that nurture program, then you probably shouldn't send them emails about that asset because they've already looked at it. So it can give Marketo that data to say, okay, they've already looked at these things, skip, go to the next one so that they keep nurturing. So that's kind of really powerful. And you can set up all kinds of cool alerts for your sales team out of your marketing automation platform as well, based on content engagement. And then we also do a lot of cool re-engagement campaigns. So someone reads part of an ebook and they only get to chapter 4 or something. We can say hey, we know you were interested in this topic. Why don't you come back and read the rest or watch this video on the same topic or whatever, similar to if you are on an e-commerce website and you looked at some products and they know who you are, they send you a really creepy email that says hey, you forgot to put this you forgot to buy this, come back later. And, that's what we're kind of doing as marketers, right? We're trying to get people to spend time with that content, and they're not giving us money, but, as professionals, their time and attention is worth something because they're working for their company. And so can you get them to come back and spend more time to become more educated about your perspective or your solutions? And so, we and a lot of our customers use PathFactory in that way to power those sort of re-engagement things to bring people back, because we know that when people are more engaged, they tend to buy faster, they buy more, their average contract values are higher. If they're customers, they tend to be retained better, or they might upsell or cross-sell better. So, there are lots of different perspectives that you can apply content engagement to, but it's almost always a signal, especially when it happens at a large volume or many people across an account or a buying committee. That's a true indicator of intent versus maybe just some of the, the other signals of intent like Google searches and stuff like that. They are engaging with your brand's content. That's a pretty darn strong signal that they maybe are in a buying cycle, or, who the members of that buying committee might be at a larger enterprise company, all of that sort of stuff.
So in other words, you're basically creating hyper-focused, really personalized content that users want to read and engage with, and align well with the brand that is using the platform, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So if you're using the sort of more AI components, it can recommend the next best asset, the next best asset, the next best asset, or, an arrangement of them to give people the option. And, I think we use a shorthand and say it's like, Netflix recommendations. It's not like quite that good yet. I'll say it's getting there. Like a lot of AI for business, there are limitations to it, but it basically what it looks at is not just who you are. It's not just saying, oh, you're in this geography or you work for this company, but it also looks at what content have you previously consumed with us. So if you're looking at a lot of ABM content, then that's a pretty good indication that you're interested in ABM, and we should continue serving that up to you instead of something that's maybe more focused on like, what someone else in your industry might be looking at, like content marketing content. Well, that's a different topic. So, let's focus on what you're interested in, or maybe even what other people at your account are looking at. That's another way you can kind of serve up recommendations. So you can kind of slice and dice it in different ways. But the big differentiator is that it's based on, the consumption of that individual person in that session, or if they're cookied, then over time. And, you kind of want to eventually convert them from unknown to known, so you can market to them even more. Like there are lots of interesting ways to sort of nurture people as well through that path. So it's a pretty complex enterprise product. There's a lot of different things that it can do, but at its core, yes, that's a good way to explain it.
So with that in mind, with that kind of insight available, I'd be really interested to hear how you track your funnel engagements, because obviously, content marketing is really key when it comes to getting the right person through the right funnel, and then ultimately converting that prospect, into a lead. So how do you manage that challenge?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is that you kind of have to change your definition of what a qualified lead is. And so it's no longer just, filling out a form or something like that. That at previous companies, that was sort of enough to trigger someone to become an MQL. And I was just, entering a LinkedIn debate about MQLs earlier today. So, I don't think it's time to throw out the MQL altogether, but I think maybe it's all about how you define it, and also all about how you communicate that information out to your other systems of record, like your marketing automation platform, out to your sales team to give them an indication of who's engaging. All of those things are really important. And like an MQL, or however you define it, just gives you information about that. So, I think if you're looking at how to define an MQL, then yes, of course, fit demographic, or those kinds of technographic things for B2B companies can be pretty important. That's just sort of a way to, raise the bar a little bit in terms of who you're willing to talk to, but also their behavior. And so, for us on our team, and what we recommend to our customers is, there should be a minimum threshold of engagement with multiple content assets or campaigns over time before they become quote unquote qualified or educated enough to talk to a salesperson. And, like part of that is selfish, because they're probably not going to want to talk to a salesperson before that point. Like they need to develop a bit of a relationship with you. They need to understand your brand. Like there's all kinds of different things that, you might want to do before passing them along to have like a BDR or someone call them out of the blue. And especially as marketers, I think we're extra sensitive to those things. Like marketers are not afraid to give us feedback about our marketing and our sales outreach. So we try to be aware of, how people feel about those things. And, I think also it's, once you start collecting that data and using it in different ways, then you can provide more personalized experiences to move people through the buying process to, let sales know what they're actually interested in. For a product like PathFactory, like we have a lot of personas that can use our product for so many different things. It's not just like, boom, one person lands, they're interested, they buy. There might be customer marketing, partner marketing, demand gen, digital marketing, all kinds of different people who are interested. And a lot of companies are like that if you have a pretty complex product. So you really have to get to the heart of what does that person who's engaging today, what are they interested in, both so you can, keep them interested and keep them moving through the buying process, but also so you can give that information to sales to say, if you are going to begin outreach because you think this is a good account or they've caught your attention or whatever, make it personalized, make it relevant to them. And so can you look at that data and say, okay, I see they are interested in ABM as a topic because I can see they watched this webinar on demand and they read this ebook and they looked at this blog post and this ABM case study. So I'm not going to reach out to them with like a totally different topic just because I feel like that's what usually works in my sales processes. There has to be increasingly a focus on the individual buyer themselves. And even like account-based marketing on its own doesn't necessarily take the individual into account, right? It's all about, the industry that account is in and maybe the problems that they would face as an organization. But at the end of the day, you're actually engaging with a human being on the other side of the screen. And so it's all about relevance and personalization for them and not just, hey, company name or hey, first name. It has to be the information that they need today to do their job better. And I think that's what B2B marketing is kind of all about.
You've touched on a point here that I think is really important to bring up. These days we tend to get involved in creating these buyer personas and that is so generic right now. You talk about creating something that is a very individual experience, right? That because everyone is different. So the challenge has, in the past has always been, how do you actually scale that kind of content marketing?
Yeah.
It seems to me that that this is the solution where, in your case, you're creating content and that is through AI being modified. Does it get modified as well along with?
No, so it doesn't modify the content. There may be other tools that do that, but it analyzes the content using natural language processing in order to say, okay, I know this content is about this. And because I've analyzed all of the other content assets that this company has, I know that it's related to all of these other things and like hundreds of different ways. Like it can pull hundreds of different data points out of each content asset. And we're getting kind of nerdy right now. So hopefully this makes sense to people, but, tries to build relationships between those content assets. And so, as people are consuming, and again, like if you spent 5 seconds on an asset, that maybe means you don't like it. But if you spent 5 minutes, that's a good indication maybe that you want to keep looking at that topic. And so it might recommend that stuff to you. So that's sort of a simple way to explain it. And so, marketers kind of always want to be in control and want to define those journeys, whether it's on the website or in nurture programs or even just launching a new campaign. You kind of think of maybe the 2 or 3 stops that someone might make on the way to that campaign, but like your buyers don't know that they're in your campaign. They don't care about your campaign. All they care about is staying on the cutting edge of their industry and learning how to do their job better and finding the best solutions for their company. And so the more you can facilitate that by putting the right things in front of them at the right time, the more successful you're going to be with your demand gen, your content marketing, et cetera. So, like you can't do that at scale as a human being. Even, the smartest marketers I know, even if they set up really good, if this, then that programming using their marketing automation platform, or if you work for a smaller business, you might actually use if this, then that, the tool and some other, automation things. But you can't possibly think of every scenario that an individual person who's going through the buying process might need. And so there are huge limitations to that. And so I think as marketers, increasingly, we have to relinquish control a little bit because otherwise we're not going to keep up with people's expectations because, you or I, after this call, we're going to put on Spotify and it's going to recommend things to us because it knows we like this type of music and we listen to these things, and we're going to watch Netflix and we're going to go on Amazon and have all of these super personalized experiences that are only possible through, machine learning, AI, and lots of good data. And so we really need to think about bringing that approach to our B2B marketing. And that's possible now. You don't have to be a Netflix necessarily. You can be a smaller B2B company that, brings that to your marketing stack using something like PathFactory or other solutions to do that. You just have to, I think the first step is being willing to give up control and acknowledge that your buyers need something from you that maybe you're not actually able to provide at scale.
So I'm also, I'm interested to know when it comes to content marketing, because it seems that's, your specialty and your background. And, it's important to understand, how do you actually generate leads right now? Is it primarily through content marketing, or do you do any paid campaigns? And what do you find has worked well?
Mm-hmm. So my philosophy is that all B2B marketing is content. Even if you're running paid campaigns, there's going to be content on the other side of that. And so regardless of what it is, it's all content. And I think when I hear about content marketers who struggle to prove the value of what they're doing because they can't measure what's happening organically with their content because the finish line is with demand gen or digital marketing teams, you just have to start to take credit for everything. And I know that sounds maybe a little bit egotistical, but the only reason those paid campaigns are successful is because someone was interested in the content on the other side of the ad. And unless you're in a super transactional business, then, squeeze pages that go from ad to conversion to buying probably aren't a thing. Like if you're in an enterprise B2B company, you have a considered purchase. Someone going from an ad to a form is just the starting point of that relationship. And in fact, they've probably already engaged with you in lots of other ways. You just don't realize it. And now they finally feel ready to contact you or give you their information. And so, here at PathFactory, of course, we do paid, but it's content on the other side of all of that. We do webinars, but it's all about forming a good story for people and helping them understand either our perspective or help them with something in their marketing, some sort of best practices that we've learned through working with hundreds of different organizations and their marketing teams on this kind of stuff, whether it's bringing data from all of the different content insights and intelligence that we have in our product. Like all of those different things can be brought to them, and all of that is just content. It's just all about how you communicate it. So, I think if any marketer is kind of kidding themselves today about what their marketing strategy really is, like content is at the heart of it. And, if your content team, your content lead isn't at the table around making those decisions and isn't part of the process from the very beginning, then that's a miss. Like you can't just, it's sort of like how, increasingly you recognize that a deal doesn't happen because marketing, like quote unquote, creates a lead and then hands it off to sales. Like content can't just create content and then hand it off to everyone else. You have to be part of the process of, okay, well, where is this going to be used? What stage of the buying cycle? What channels? What will the promotion look like around this? Like it's all about integrating those functions and making them work as a single sort of engine for the company rather than siloing them and having each one have its own strategy, which, is maybe easier at companies our size. If you have a huge team, that might be more difficult. But, that's a big part of the reason why I'm in the role that I am today, why I went from content marketing into leading the marketing team, is because I could think about, what are all the uses for the content that we're creating? How is it going to drive value for the business? How can we focus on creating content that will have an impact, not just on, awareness and top of funnel leads, but all the way through the funnel, to really move the business forward so that we can achieve the revenue goals that we want to achieve. As much as we have a mission about helping marketers and changing the buying process, we also have revenue targets. We have investors, and you have to keep those people happy too. So, I think anyone who can sort of bridge that gap will be much more successful in terms of progressing their career from content into, more of a business strategist role.
So where do you see are the biggest opportunities, for PathFactory in the near future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you mean the product or the market or our marketing team?
Because it seems that, from a content marketing perspective, actually, because I think that, content marketing has evolved quite a bit over the past few years. And
Yeah.
obviously, in the analytical portion as well, where, people are now really savvy in terms of tracking what works and what doesn't work. And they need to do that because obviously they're investing so much time in
Yeah.
creating the content. And, studies have shown that you should be actually spending 20% of the time creating the content and 80% marketing the content. So, to be successful, I mean, but, often it's the reverse, or, very minimal time is spent in marketing the content.
Yeah.
So when it comes to content marketing, what do you see is the future of content marketing?
Yeah. Well, I think a couple of things are, first of all, marketers need to understand what they have already. I think that's a big problem where over the last 5 to 10 years, every company has created so much content that like they don't even know what they have anymore. It's just this giant library or resource center, a dumping ground of hundreds or even thousands of assets, website pages, SEO pages. Like there's just stuff everywhere and they don't know what they have. They're maybe wasting time and money creating stuff that's kind of redundant or ineffective. So I think the first part is like better tools to help people understand what they already have and how it's performing. And I think the next step of that is like, how do you use that to make decisions about your overall marketing strategy? So once you know what you have and what's working, how do you integrate that into your decision-making process around your messaging and positioning, around which channels you use? Can you use that data to how people are engaging with content to optimize different channels? Like it's great to squeeze leads out of landing pages, but I think that is, there are diminishing returns to that. It's not scalable. And, increasingly people don't want to do that sort of behavior. They don't want to fill out a form just because you put it in front of them. So how do we look beyond that and give them smarter, say maybe engagement-based gating strategies, or even, on our team, we gate almost nothing. And if we do put up a gate, it's dismissible and it really tries to convince someone why they should fill out the form. And it's not to talk to a salesperson. Like we promise them that, when they fill out this form, we're going to use the data that they've given us to give them personalized, emails that have content attached to them so they can continue learning about this topic that they've spent time on. So, I think increasingly we have to sort of form a pact with our audience that we are going to work harder for them to deliver more relevant content. And so, I think the other thing is you need a lot of good data to do that. So how can we integrate the data that comes out of content, whether it's the content itself or the engagement with the content, into all of our different systems to understand how to make decisions for the business, both in marketing, but also elsewhere. Like, you might, if you see a lot of interest in a new industry or category that you're testing, for example, then maybe you need to stand up a whole team around that because there's a lot of opportunity there. Or, even through COVID, at the beginning of COVID, like we were all so afraid to market things because we were afraid of saying the wrong thing. But could you throw out some, tester messages through some lightweight blog posts or videos or something and see how those perform, and then, feel confident to quickly come back and make a decision? So I think that there's sort of like, we have to develop a shorter view of how content performs. Of course, it should drive revenue and pipeline for the business, but you have to be able to make decisions based on how that content is performing much earlier in the content lifecycle. So you can't wait for that revenue to come in. You have to say, I launched this yesterday. How is it performing? Is it working the way I expected? If not, why? Let's figure that out. So just becoming a lot more agile with that and using content as a way to generate insights for the rest of the marketing team and the rest of the business, because there's a lot of really powerful stuff there that I think most companies are not tapping into today. And like they don't even realize that they should be tapping into it because they just see content as a tool to, squeeze leads out of a landing page, which, is again like a pretty limited way of thinking about it.
Yeah, it takes so much more convincing right now to have people leave their information on a landing page. And it's really important that you actually instill the confidence that you're not going to be abusing their information, and there's nobody on the other side that's going to give them a call the next hour and try to sell them something. I think that's really important to establish that trust. Speaking about COVID, I mean, how has COVID impacted PathFactory's growth?
Mm-hmm. So certainly at the beginning of the pandemic, we were like every other company where, we all went home and we just sort of hunkered down and wanted to see what was happening and, had to prepare for the worst. And so, we did have to lay off some people in the company early on, sort of in preservation mode, like so many other companies did. But I think pretty quickly we realized that, the company was going to weather the storm really well. investment in marketing certainly dropped off in many industries. Some things became off limits, like we're not going to be selling to travel companies and, what are some of the other industries that were hit really hard? The restaurant industry, like those, hospitality, all of those things were kind of off limits because they were just gutting their marketing teams and their marketing budgets. And so they weren't going to be spending on new technologies. But there was also a whole subset of industries that actually were doing really well and were looking to modernize really quickly because they had to suddenly only reach their audiences through digital marketing, through virtual events. And so that's something we're really great at. And so we were able to, reach out to some of those existing companies like cybersecurity, IT, all the customers that we would normally sell to, who were doubling down on that stuff that they had already started sort of, being innovators and dipping their toes into. And then also whole new industries like, say, healthcare and pharmaceutical industries that are more B2B. They were trying to modernize really quickly because maybe previously they were more relationship-based selling where they would go to trade shows or even have one-on-one customer meetings and have to sell everything that way. But they had no capability to run digital marketing or to understand how things were performing. And so they were looking to bring in some solutions. So even just in the span of like a year, one of our biggest customers is now a healthcare insurance company that, previously would have been extremely old school and like maybe we wouldn't have thought of them as an ideal customer, but they've had to very quickly be agile and respond to the market and find ways to just jump headfirst into digital marketing and figure out how to deliver content to people and measure how it's working. So, overall, I think we ended 2020 exactly where we wanted to be, which was kind of surprising. I think everyone was expecting for it to be worse than that. And so I think that's a good place to be. And so far in 2021, we've just been growing like gangbusters even more. So we're hiring like crazy. We're bringing on all kinds of new people in, all different departments to handle that growth and to prepare for even more growth in the future. So I think it just gave us confidence that like maybe before 2020, we were a bit early in the market and there were only sort of those early adopters and innovators who were going to buy something like PathFactory. But now everyone has realized the importance of digital marketing. And, it might seem kind of funny to some of us who have always worked in digital marketing to hear people say that, but there are just entire companies and swaths of industries who haven't adopted that approach yet. And they might be doing some very limited, email marketing or something, but they haven't taken a more holistic approach to, running content online. They haven't taken a more holistic approach to virtual events and webinars, and bringing all that data together in a marketing automation platform. So there's just like a huge digital transformation happening in some of those legacy industries, even manufacturing and, facilities and all of those industries where people don't even sit at computers to do their jobs. They are, maybe on a factory floor or in just walking around a huge college campus to manage the facility or something. Those people increasingly had to be reached through digital marketing too. So, that's been really interesting for us. And it's also been interesting for us to look at content consumption patterns through COVID. Definitely some things changed. And one of my dreams as a content marketer is to, start putting out regular reports about how people across our customer base are engaging with that content and what trends we do notice over time. Because some of it's kind of surprising, like there's the content that a lot of companies invest in isn't necessarily the content that people engage with the most or for the longest. One of the things that continues to surprise me is that a lot of audiences, and no matter what their persona is or what industry they're in, they will spend 5 minutes with an infographic and like 1 minute with a 50-page ebook. There's just something psychologically about people want to get into the details of the visual infographic. And like, I personally hate creating infographics, so I'm kind of biased against them. Like they're such a pain in the butt to make. But they're often that sort of magic asset that people just spend so much time with. And I think it's just because we're very visual, like humans are visual creatures. And we like to have all the information presented in that way versus in a black and white paper, ebook or something like that. So, things like that just continue to astound me. And I'm really interested in bringing some of those insights, out to the market, because I think people are, still investing in 90-page white papers and things that, I'm not saying nobody will read, but, people won't read enough of them to make it worth the effort. So you have to get creative and come up with other ways of presenting the same information to people.
That's really interesting. I mean, there's all kinds of data out there as to what kind of content assets you should be creating. And obviously, companies that are investing in content marketing, they're spending so much time creating ebooks, white papers, and checklists, and infographics, and videos, and webinars, and all these different assets that are out there. And then when it comes time for conversions, do you know, or do you have any data that shows, okay, certain kinds of content, perform well than others? Obviously, infographics perform well than ebooks, as you've stated. But are there webinars, videos, or courses, anything along those lines that can provide a little bit more insight?
Mm-hmm. My answer won't be very satisfying. It really depends. Okay. It depends on so many factors, what channel they came from, what their expectation was going into the asset. We're not necessarily, all of our customers are not presenting that data in the same, or presenting that experience in the same context. And so that's one thing that I find challenging to recommend. And also, I really want to advocate for not gating things and not trying to convert people. I know that's how marketers feel safe in terms of their marketing goals and stuff, but your goal should be to educate people, not to convert them. And that's really hard for people to hear. It's really scary. It's a tough adjustment to make. Of course, you want people to identify themselves, but you shouldn't force them. And so I think a lot of marketers, even our customers who are using PathFactory, they still want to use the hard gating in a lot of context. And that's always going to have a level of drop off. So I would be much more interested in if you give someone a form and get them to fill out a form, or if you just give someone access to the asset on its own without a form, do they spend longer? I would be curious in answering that question, that's much more interesting to me as a marketer. And I think that should be more interesting to businesses as well, because again, we know that content consumption is directly correlated with things like buying faster and buying more from your company. So those are the sorts of questions that I really want to answer for people, because I do see them anecdotally among our customers. And yeah, I'm positive that people may, if you had a hard gate on an infographic versus an ebook, they would probably be more willing to fill out the form for an ebook, but would they actually read it? That's the big question. And, that's a big part of the problem that PathFactory is trying to solve is to prevent your sales reps from calling people saying oh, I saw you downloaded this ebook, you filled out the form. And they're like, yeah, I filled out the form, but I never looked at it. It's on my desktop somewhere. So, it's much better to come from a place of knowing that someone actually consumed the content versus did they just fill out the form? So I think even that is just a huge mind shift for so many marketers, and something that I kind of want to get away from, because it's you could squeeze a few more conversions out, or you could truly educate your buyers and they might come back and fill out take a demo form and be ready to buy and just go through a super quick sales process so that your sales team can focus on even more accounts and selling more deals. So those are the sorts of things that I'm really interested in.
Yeah, I mean, education is the best form of marketing. I think it's really important to highlight that. And also, I think that when it comes to those gated content, I agree with you 100%. I mean, it just pisses me off personally, especially if there's gated content, I have to go fill out a form and get access to this 5-page ebook that is just general information on the website. I mean, I think I think when it comes to serving your audience, you really have to value their time. And that's what content needs to do. It needs to deliver in the best way and form that they can get the information and the message in the quickest manner. And that's why I think that there's a place for webinars, there's a place for ebooks, there's a place for every kind of content. It just really depends on where that individual is in their journey, in their customer journey, and then essentially what kind of content they're trying to access. So it seems to me that the insights that you're able to offer allows companies to make better decisions about what content types to be used and what content types are working well, and then help them basically create a more effective content strategy. So
exactly, yeah. So it's less about how do you squeeze out more conversions and how do you bring people the right content and right content formats at the right stage of their buying journey, either manually through curating that list of content for them. You can use those insights. And okay, even if AI is sort of making recommendations for people, you're still going to be running a nurture program that some marketer has to program. And so like, why not choose the order of that nurture program based on data that you have already based on how people are engaging, and like choose your most engaging assets when you know that someone, is more likely to take a meeting because they've looked at this piece of content. Like, why don't you just leverage that across all of your channels and like use it in those moments? If you know that people are going to click on a certain report, then like, yes, put that in your top of funnel nurture or run ads around that. Like, you can apply those insights across all of your marketing strategies to make them more effective. So those are questions I think we should all get really curious about.
Absolutely. So just to shift gears a little bit here, Cassandra, if you were to go back 5 or 10 years, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I think I would say that nobody really knows what they're doing in marketing. I always felt like a bit of an outsider coming from the journalism industry. And I sort of felt like, oh, I'm not a real marketer. I'm just a journalist who's playing marketer, because I can get a job there. But I think what I've realized over time is that, marketing changes so often and, it's evolving so quickly that we're all just figuring it out as we go. And there might be some overall best practices, or you might get really good technically in certain areas over time. You might develop some expertise there, but really, we're all just flying by the seats of our pants most of the time and seeing what works for the company that we're working at today. There's just no there's no replacement for experience. And, even people coming out of business school with marketing degrees have no idea what they're doing. Even people with MBAs have no idea what they're doing half the time. So like, I think, just knowing that, you can trust your intuition and find tools available to you in your organization, whether it's people or data or processes that can help you achieve that, to build your network, to understand what's working at other companies. There are lots of things you can do, but no one is kind of born an inherent marketer or achieves that just through education. So it's really all about the experience and, also just to trust yourself. Like there's a lot of marketing is like just taking in a whole bunch of information and making a call about what to do, making a decision. And that can be exhausting sometimes and it can feel uncertain, but it's really all just about trying things, seeing what works, and then trying to do that better, faster, more at scale. Like that's how I would kind of simplify it. So there's no sort of rocket science formula that will just automatically unlock magical growth or something. So, I think I spent a lot of time, and I think a lot of young marketers still think that, and, they worry that, they're not meant to be a marketer or something. But I think if you're curious and you're creative and you can think about all of those different things together and try to come up with ideas and conclusions and make decisions, then that's really all there is to it. It's always going to be hard and it's always going to feel uncertain, but you just have to kind of keep going. And the fun is in trying different things and seeing what works and learning from that. So you can do it like 1% better next time.
So true. I think, marketing is such a turbulent environment and there's always things that are changing. Just this past year, I mean, so much has changed in marketing. So
definitely.
So based on your experience and the challenges that you've overcome in the past decade, if there was one big takeaway that you could give to our listeners, what would that be?
I think as a content marketer and now working for PathFactory, having a true north that is educating your audience as much as possible is, the big thing that wins. Even before I knew anything about marketing, the reason that, that first company I worked for, to go back to the beginning of our conversation, the first company I worked for was successful because we were educating both sides of our audience about things they needed to know. And so they came to see us as a trusted source of information, a place where they could get that, where they couldn't get it anywhere else. And so you develop a relationship with your audience that way. And that's how they begin to trust you. It's not about necessarily like, those marketing goals or those sales goals. Those things will come if you have these other pieces that fall into place. So focus on making those things better versus, again, like trying to squeeze out that conversion or trying to force that phone conversation if you have a BDR team or something. People will become interested and trust you over time if you help them through educational content, webinars, all that kind of stuff. And, there's a lot of other things that have to go along with that. So, once you deliver on that buying experience and they become a customer, you have to have a good product that does what you say it does. does, and they have to be happy with it and be able to generate value for their company and become advocates. So if you don't have that piece as well, that's a big thing. When I worked at Influitive, it was all about advocate marketing, and I'd never even heard of that concept before I worked there. But I do think that having those happy customers out in the marketplace helps your demand gen a lot. So, as much as demand gen relies on content, you also rely on, the brand that your customers define you as out in the marketplace when you're not in the room. It's how they talk about you to their peers in those private Slack communities, at events, all of that kind of stuff. That's how you're perceived. And no matter how hard you demand gen every day or how hard you try to sell every day, if that conversation is negative, then it's going to be really difficult to convince people to trust you enough to buy. So, I think looking at those other pieces and making sure they're in place before or, in tandem with making those improvements alongside improving your demand gen, numbers is really, really important. So you can't generate demand without some of those other things in place. And it really should be about helping your audience versus just trying to squeeze them as much as possible for their information. So that's definitely something that, I've learned along the way. And when I see companies succeeding, it tends to be because they do have that maniacal focus on providing that amazing experience every step of the way.
So true. So, Cassandra, where can people find out more about yourself, and how can they contact you online?
Sure. You can contact me on LinkedIn. You can just search for my name, Cassandra Jowett. You can also check out PathFactory at pathfactory.com. And I'm also on Twitter at Cassandra Jowett. So I'm pretty accessible. And you can also email me, Cassandra at pathfactory.com.
Awesome. Cassandra, thank you so much for your time today. I think it's been wonderful to have a chat with you about your experience, your background, as well as the success that PathFactory has had over the years. And we wish you the best in the near future over here, and keep in touch.